we're going to turn the page here again to another critical issue. That's the issue of student debt. I'm sure that's an issue that, well, it's certainly an issue I'm dealing with. I can tell you this. I don't know about your personal
Right
finances.
here.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
We are very, very honored to have with us here India Walton, who is the senior strategic organizer for Roots Action, and obviously world famous socialist mayoral candidate in Buffalo. Shocked the world, inspired us all. India Walton, thank you so much for joining us here on the Freedom Side.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here to talk about this very important issue.
You know, it's a critically important issue. I have to say, I paid my student loans like 2 days ago. And even though I do it every month, and I've done it every month for over a decade now, it's still like the biggest sticker shock. And I always am thinking, I can't believe I'm doing this. But, you know, help us frame this issue. I mean, how much student debt is out there? How bad is it for people? I mean, there's sort of a perception that it's not that big of a deal promoted by some of those who say we shouldn't get rid of it.
Right. So there are more than 45 million Americans with student debt. The student debt burden right now as a nation we carry is about $1.7 trillion.
Wow.
But I think the most astonishing part about that, as we leave Black History Month and enter into Women's History Month, is the way it disproportionately impacts women. The way student debt disproportionately impacts people of color, and the way it disproportionately impacts poor people. It's disheartening that we are now a year into the Biden administration and we've not seen any of the promises that he campaigned on delivered.
Tell us, for people like me and Eugene who are still having to pay student debt into our 30s, which I cannot tell you. I mean, anybody who has student debt, it's like so frustrating for obvious reasons. But what could be done? Because oftentimes we'll hear from politicians that like they can't do anything about it, even if they made campaign promises. Like you get the idea that it's just not possible. Is that true? Or is there something that could be done to get rid of this debt? And if so, what is it? What could be done?
So Roots Action is partnering with the debtors union. And we know that the Higher Education Act of 1965 gives the president certain executive powers. So by executive order, President Biden could wipe it out right now, today. Could have done it a year ago, should have done it a year ago. So we're heading down to DC on April 4th to push the issue, right? We're looking at repayments resuming May 1st, and it's going to be a burden on a lot of working class people who, frankly, I think that for a lot of us, we're sold a lie. We were told that if you work hard and go to college, that you'll get a good job with a good wage. And we're seeing people that are strapped with tens of thousands of dollars in student debt, and employers are not matching the promise that we were sold. So it's time for us to have a reset, to cancel student debt and make higher education free. In a world with so much information flying around, it doesn't make any sense that folks are having to have the burden of debt to pay for what is widely available.
Mm-hmm. And, one thing I want to ask is, I'm always so shocked when I hear this, but it's one of the big things, is there's a whole line of argument that we shouldn't cancel student debt because somehow canceling student debt is racist and will be worse for Black people who have borrowed money, and thus it's just giving money away to rich white people at the expense of Black people. Now, that sounds wrong to me, but I hear it so much. I'm hoping you could, debunk it or not, I guess.
It is wrong. I think it's a straw man defense, right? Because rich white people who have money for college don't generally take on student debt to pay for college. Right. Their parents pay for it for them. And I know that if I had $75,000 less in student debt, it would free me up to do things like pursue purchasing a home, provide resources to put my children in extracurricular activities, right? So to some people, $500 a month, I heard the previous conversation about the advanced child tax credit. To some folks, $250 or $500 a month is not a lot of money, but for the majority of us, it's a significant amount of money that is better spent on other things, right? People are waiting and withholding marriage, having children, making career changes, going back to school, opening businesses because they have to worry about student debt first. And it's just a ridiculous notion that in a place like the United States of America, there are people who are being prevented from upward social mobility because they're paying this extractive education system.
India, there's another aspect of this that's like so outrageous. I remember a couple of years ago when I was doing a segment on student loan debt, I was so stunned by the numbers around about elderly people who are not only dealing with the payment of student loan debt, they are actually, the US government garnishes part of their social security payments if they're defaulting on their loans. Can you talk a little bit about that aspect of it? I know it's not as many people. I think it's something like around 3 million Americans that that are stuck with student debt who are like over the age of 60. I don't know if that number is still accurate. It was a few years ago. But
Yeah.
what's going on there? What's going on with the issue of elderly people who are even having social security taken from them over this?
Well, first of all, one person who is having their Social Security, their already limited income garnished to repay student loans is ridiculous. I mean, the notion is just inhumane. And, it's the loan servicing, right? That's the most disgusting part, right? Is that you take out these loans, you after 20 years for some folks, they still have not even paid down any significant percentage of the principal on the loan. It's just a really exploitive and extractive practice. And I think that, folks of any age, but I think that the fact that it's being branded as sort of a millennial issue, right, is another way to keep us divided enough to not have the political will to make this thing happen. And I just dream about the day that student debt is canceled in this utopian society we're going to live in, when folks are actually like going out to dinner and supporting local businesses instead of large corporations that use our student loan repayments for naming rights on large stadiums and
right.
Yeah, I'm actually really glad you brought that up. No, I was gonna say, I'm really glad you brought that up because, this is the United States. So anything that it seems like it should logically happen and it's not, it means someone's probably making money off of it. I mean, who is getting paid off of this? Because I keep thinking, like, what is going on that we can't get any movement on this?
That's what it always is, right? It's follow the money. We've seen lawsuits coming out recently where it's the loan servicing companies, it's the CEOs, and in the student loan borrower industry, if you could call it that, right? You see lobbying very similar to what we see in the carceral lobby, right? In the pharmaceutical lobby. There are people who just have an interest in keeping things the way they are because it makes them richer and it keeps the working class working harder than we should.
Yeah, I'd love to know where those thousands of dollars in interest that I've paid over the last decade, like where did that go? Whose, I don't know, private jet did that help pay for, or yacht, or I don't know.
Well, Wells Fargo,
but I'm sure it's going into someone's yacht.
Yeah. Well, Wells Fargo executives, if you're watching, you're welcome for whatever fantastic meal you're having right now, because I'm paying.
I'm glad
for
I could help subsidize your luxurious lifestyle. And I wanted to just briefly, like, the issue of student debt. So obviously we're for canceling it, but then what happens, right? Because then that whole system is still in play. So beyond just canceling it, what else do we need to do to make sure that there's not another generation of people who end up like us in 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 years still paying off their student loans angrily and hoping someone will cancel their debt?
College should be free. I think that there are certain things that we have not acknowledged should be basic human rights, especially in one of the wealthiest nations in the world. Housing should be a human right, healthcare should be a human right, and access to a good quality education. And couple that with clean air and water, and I'm a happy girl. I wouldn't ask for much more than that.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me
Thanks
ask
so
you this.
much.
You said you're going down to DC on April 4th. For those who are interested in everything you all are doing there at Roots Action on this issue, I bet there's a lot of them watching. Where can people go to find out more and get involved?
Yeah, I've for the last year become sort of a Twitter freak. So you can follow me on Twitter at India Walton from Buffalo. Follow Roots Action also on Twitter, and visit our website at rootsaction.org.
Well, India, we really appreciate you giving us some time. I know you got a lot going on, but it was really an honor to have you here with us on the freedom side. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and have a great day.
You too.